Have you ever gone shopping and seen something for $500 and thought that's way too expensive? And then you notice something else for $300 and suddenly it feels like a bargain? So, what's happening here? It's called anchoring bias, and it's one of the most fascinating ways our brains play tricks on us. But it's not just about shopping, it's everywhere in negotiations, in decisions, and even how you perceive random trivia. So, first, let's start with the definition and then let's go on to the famous experiment that shows that how much anchoring can mess with our judgment. Anchoring bias is when your brain latches onto the first piece of information it gets, whether it's a number, a fact, or even a suggestion, and uses it as a reference point for everything that comes after. For example, if someone says a laptop costs $1,000, your brain starts comparing everything to that number. If you later see the same laptop for $800, it feels like a great deal, even if $800 is still overpriced. That $1,000 becomes your mental anchor. Now, coming to one of the most famous studies done by psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. It's a simple experiment, but the results are shocking. Now, in this experiment, the participants were asked to spin a wheel with numbers from 0 to 100. But here's the twist. The wheel was rigged to stop at either 10 or 65. The participants didn't know this. They thought it was random. And after spinning the wheel, they were asked a completely unrelated question. What percentage of African countries are members of the United Nations? Now, logically, the number on the wheel, 10 or 65, should have no impact on their guesses, right? It's just a random spin, but that's not what happened. Participants who saw the wheel land on 10 guessed on average about 25% of African countries that were in the UN. But those who saw the wheel stop at 65 guessed much higher, around 45%. That's nearly double the first group's estimate, all because of a random number on a wheel. The number 10 or 65 became their mental anchor, even though it was completely irrelevant to the actual question. So, why did their guesses differ so much? It's because our brains are wired to rely on the first piece of information we encounter. When we don't have enough context or knowledge about something, like the percentage of African countries in the UN, we grab onto whatever in front of us, even if it's totally unrelated. In this case, the random number acted as the mental starting point, or anchor, and their guesses adjusted around it. Now, let's talk about the more everyday examples of anchoring bias. Let's start with something you've all experienced. You walk into a store and see a jacket marked was $100, now $50. That $100 is your anchor. It makes $50 feel like an incredible deal, even if the jacket was never worth $100 to begin with. Stores use this trick all the time to make you spend more. And now, in a restaurant, have you ever noticed that fancy restaurants often put the most expensive item at the top of the menu? It's not because they expect everyone to buy it, it's to set an anchor. If the first thing you see is a $100 steak, the $40 pasta below it suddenly feels affordable, even though it's still pricey. In real estate, anchoring bias happens all the time. Imagine you're house hunting and the first home you see is listed at $1 million. Every house you see afterward gets compared to that number. Even if a house is overpriced, it can feel reasonable compared to that initial anchor. Anchoring bias can also impact big decisions like salary negotiations. Imagine you're in an interview and the employer says we are offering $50,000. Even if you think you're worth more, that number sets the tone for the entire discussion. It's hard to negotiate much higher because your brain is anchored to that initial figure. Do you really think anchoring bias is all about just numbers? Even in casual conversations, the very first thing that someone says can shape your perception. For example, if a friend says, "This movie got terrible reviews," you might actually end up watching it with that negativity in mind, even if you would have liked it otherwise. Anchoring bias isn't just a fun psychological quirk, it can influence important decisions in ways we don't even realize. From how much we tip at a restaurant to how much we vote on policies, the first piece of information we encounter can shape everything that follows. So, how can you avoid falling for anchoring bias? Here are a few tips. Pause and question. When you hear a number or suggestion, ask yourself if it's reasonable or if it's just setting an anchor. And then do your research. Whether you're negotiating a salary or buying something expensive, know the market value ahead of time. And also compare multiple sources. Don't make decisions based on just one piece of information. Look at different options to get a more accurate picture. Anchoring bias shows us just how much our brains rely on shortcuts and how those shortcuts can sometimes lead us astray. The next time you're making a decision, ask yourself, is this my true judgment or am I being influenced by an anchor? Understanding this bias won't just make you a smart shopper, it will help you see the world in a whole new way. So, what's the craziest example of anchoring bias you've noticed in your life? Let me know in the comments. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.